Tonic Show. We help Muslims and non-Muslims alike to understand and handle Islam in the 21st century. We consider ourselves to be decent human beings, so we condemn categorically any abuse, oppression, misogyny, slavery, violence, anything like that. We do embrace, however, free speech and also criticism, even if it is directed at us, if it is factual and constructive criticism. We focus on Islam exclusively. So if you're curious about anything Islam, you've come to the right place. Now, we don't attack, which is aggressive, destructive, and antagonistic, neither Islam nor Muslims. We ask questions and show facts. We refute false claims and present the reality of Islam, which is political Islam. We inspect, investigate, research, analyze, and then report and critique on Islam, the ideology, not the people. Now, the live stream goes to YouTube and Facebook, and there are three ways that you can participate in this. Either you join us in the live written chat, you can join the panel during the live show, or later on watch and comment the archive. And anyone can join to comment, critique, contribute, or question. This is not a dawah channel with censorship. Don't go to Patreon, don't go to PayPal. Everything here is free. The way we work is usually we have some news, some Krazy Komments, a segment where we go and read the Quran, and then a discussion on the theme of the month, followed by integrating the live chat, ending with a Hadith of the week. If this is not enough Islam for you, there's still the Discord channel where you can discuss with us without anything being recorded. See you later and enjoy the Gin and Tonic Show. Hello and good evening. It is Friday the 4th of June. Jesus, nearly halfway in the year. Unbelievable. Welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show, where we talk about Islam. Welcome to the chat. Welcome to the panel. Welcome, Mr. Rob Speakers, the trusted co-host and host and owner and everything. How are you doing, my man?
Good evening, sir. Yes, all that mouthful. All good and well, yeah. Good evening to my co-panelists, to all the live viewers, and if you're watching this afterwards, greetings to you as well. Looking forward to an interesting show that's going to be full, and we're going to have an interesting review video later on.
And passing this on to the Nick of Time podcast. How are you going?
Going great. I'm going to have a lot of fun here today. I think we got a great video.
Hope so. And that brings us to Mr. the Moose, the Staff, How are you doing?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, brothers in the chat. Assalamu alaikum, my salams going towards the people in the live chat, the brothers and sisters in the live chat. How is everybody?
But let me tell you, you got some positive feedback from last week's show, where people, somebody said, when you started reading the Krazy comment in your accent, he had wine spitting out of his nose.
I think I do the sheikh, or the Desi, the Middle Eastern, South Asian accent too well.
And I must say, I always stumble, because I love the intro. I think Pio did a really, really fantastic job. But I always stumble across because in the audio, I go and I say, and the Discord server, where we go and we and explain how Discord works, which, and then I end with, so let's go to the Discord channel. And I cut all this middle piece out, which is why it says, and we'll go to the Discord channel, because I went and finished on a different sentence, which I thought it was okay, if I was just going to use it once or twice, but I didn't know that P.O. was going to use it. So every time I hear it now, I cringe when I hear this.
It's part of the intro now, so...
Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah. But I don't think many people hear it, but of course I do. Yeah.
But yeah, stop. So before we continue, I would like to offer a small saying. May Allah give us the strength to power through the cringe we are going to see today.
Yes, and keep a shaitan like yourself silent in the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
And just in case people, if you're wondering what this is in the background, this is a picture of some goddesses, but Nabatean goddesses. And I thought this is so cute. I was going to use it as a background because, it really, I like it. But unfortunately, these black boxes, and I've asked StreamYard, listen, can't you reduce this? Can't you reduce us just to, a small black circle or something like this? And they said, no, we can't, blah, blah, blah. It's a placeholder for the camera. And da, da, da. So if you're wondering, the three goddesses, the Nabatean, not Islamic, these are Nabatean goddesses, okay? Because in the Quran, of course, we don't have them because the satanic verses never happened. So Manat al-Uzza, they are just Nabatean goddesses. But this is probably what they looked like, I think. So just in case you're wondering what is behind there you go. What do we normally do on the Genetonic show? Well, we have a structure. And this structure is that we go into the news. And ladies and gentlemen, today we have, and people in the chat, you better pay attention now. We have a historic show today because this is going to start, I don't know, in a couple of years, this is going to happen. Because what is happening is that MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudi Crown Prince, has decided to start a reformation of Islam. Now,
No way.
many Muslim intellectuals were persecuted and killed because they proposed a ban on stoning, scourging, killing apostates and homosexuals. But this is exactly what MBS is proposing. Now, in an interview, not very long, it's only 20 minutes, in Al Arabiya, MBS proposed even more, a reform of Islam, pruning Hadith, fixing errors in the Quran, kicking out Wahhabism, which he calls deifying human beings. And what he wants to do, and this is a quote, we are obliged to implement the Quran in one form or another, making Islam more Quran-centric in KSA, in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So this is going to be amazing if he is able, and he will be allowed by the clerics to go through with this, because this marks a revolution. This is like Luther nailing his 92 or something thesis on the doors of the church. And this is going to be amazing, because if he's going to find criteria by which he's going to be able to chuck out hadith and fix the errors, all the mistakes, at least the grammatical and the obvious ones. Like, remember, there's this scribal error where they mix up command and prohibit. And if you take prohibit out and replace it with command, the sentence makes sense. But if you leave the prohibited in there, it doesn't make sense. So things like that, obvious mistakes, if you take those out, what exactly is Islam going to be left with? And this is an interesting topic. And I'm going to be watching this to see what people are going to be saying about this, what the reaction in the Muslim world is going to be about this, because this is going to be absolutely amazing to see whether you can, because I've always maintained you cannot fix Islam. It's impossible. But if he's going to go through with it, okay, congratulations. We'll see.
I would actually like to see Mol Hijab's view on that.
Who's that?
Mohammed Hijab.
Oh, Mohammed Hijab. Yeah, I'm going to wait for the reaction of you. I mean, the interview's been out for, I think, 3 weeks now. Or is it even, yeah, something like that. And I have not heard much about it. Rob was skeptical as well. And he said, listen, where the fuck do you get this? And I sent him the full transcript. And this is exactly what it says, because the transcript is there. If you go to Al Arabiya and you look for this, you won't find it. But looking for the item once you know it is there, then it's possible. But not the other way around. I mean, just looking for it arbitrarily, they're not propagating it yet. They're too scared. So, but the transcript is there, and you can see it for yourself what he's actually saying. So This is quite interesting. So remember, you heard it on the Gin and Tonic show. Let's see if we can predict the future, because I am predicting that there will be a huge amount of shouting, talking, threatening, all sorts of things. But in the end of the day, at the end of the day, they're going to be doing it. They have to. I mean, it's long overdue. I mean, we've been looking at the same version of Islam now for 300-400 years, and it's no longer applicable, and it's dying. And MBS is not a stupid guy. Okay, he might be somebody who sends people to kill people in Turkey. Okay, but he's not stupid, so he can see that in its current form, Islam cannot survive the 21st century. So let's see what happens. One thing I can't resist this. I can't resist this. This is the privilege of being the host of a show like this. I can do things like that because this is actually too funny to skip. This is what happens if you order water from IKEA. You get 2 bottles of hydrogen and 1 oxygen.
This is brilliant. This is this is exactly nearly 90% of the furniture I've ordered from IKEA has been like this.
Some assembly required. So I thought this is so funny. I thought
too funny. This is too funny.
Okay.
Yeah.
You will be meeting me in hell after you told us a joke like that.
All right. Now let's see.
Here we go.
All right. Hasbi Allah. Allah is enough for me.
There you go. That's all you need. That's all you need. This is the silly thing that this guy said on the Discord channel. This is all you need is Islam. All you need is Allah, and everything else is automatic. So you don't need to assume that you exist. You don't need to assume that you have, like, I don't know, 18? How many senses does a human have? I think it's 18 or something. Or maybe some say it's 22. There's still some discussion about what is considered to be a sense or not. But there's still Muslims who are saying 5 senses, that's all you have, because that's what it mentions in Islam. So, yeah. Anyway, Allah is enough, and that is what they need. And if you are that way inclined, well, good for you. I don't have a problem with that at all. And this is something that most people don't understand. I do not have a problem with Islam and people believing if this is what they want to believe. If that's what you need, if you need a God to get you through the day, well, go ahead. Just remember, I do not need your God. So please leave others alone. This would be the easiest way.
Exactly.
So and if people would just shut up, they would be, I mean, they're always saying, you're atheist this, atheist that. Well, then shut the fuck up. And if you shut up, there are no, I mean, if the theist shuts up, there is no atheist. There's no reason for there to be one. Because then we can all live in peace and nobody has any gods or things. Then we're all good to go. But, okay, these are some comments. I'm sorry I couldn't incorporate the ones that you picked up today.
That's
Who are
okay.
you picking? Here's something from.
I'll make it a bit bigger.
I'm just looking.
Oh,
at this.
it's the one who you picking between Palestine and Israel, or Jews and Muslims, right? So, okay, I'll read this one.
Can I go up and down on this? No, I can't.
All right.
Okay, who are you picking? Muslim because they got the strongest. That's the beginning, right?
Because Muslim, because they got the strongest soldiers of all time. And then second one, Muslim, and then this star, and then there's the because it's the best religion and the fastest religion. Did I read that right? It's the fastest religion. No, not fastest growing. Fastest religion. All right. Now, okay. Star Moon. Forever I'm going demon mode in the fight. Demon. Muscle. Allah with us. Muscle punch.
When did I join this fight?
Yeah.
Allahu Akbar. That's my Mehdi.
That's all. Okay,
Okay,
cool.
that's perfect. Perfect. Okay.
All right, then do the next one. I'll see. Oh, this one is okay.
Most Westerners don't realize Islamophobia is far more dangerous than COVID. It has destroyed millions of lives already.
Islamophobia. I don't even know what that is. I still don't understand the word because people tell me it's the hatred of Muslims. Okay, number one, there is nothing about hatred in the word. There's nothing about Muslims. There's nothing in here of anything that would indicate what its intention is. So this is a silly, silly word, really.
I think
But it
this,
destroys millions of lives. Okay.
yeah, this term was invented in the 1970s. I think this was in response to the Salman Rushdie affair. I think, no? Or am I wrong?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Oh, this one is a brilliant. Okay, you go forth. We will. This was a post on TikTok, and this person said, "This is what we will be like in heaven. We will sweat mosque perfume."
Of course. And if you drink beer, no, you drink wine.
You
Your
drink
breath
wine.
will not smell bad. It will smell of
It will be
roses.
musk. It will musk perfume. All right, next one. We will be 33 years old and forever pretty.
Yes, of course. Speak for yourself. How am I ever going to be pretty? Yes.
And 33. What's up with the number 33?
Yeah, they love this 33. I think the Christians also have this. They also use this 33.
Yeah, it's so weird. We will see angels.
All angels.
All
70.
angels.
I mean, please, every single day, Allah creates 70,000 new angels. That's what it says. Okay, every single day. Now, can you imagine from the time of existence until today, how many angels, how many trillion, billion, zillion, googlean, how many he's created?
Well,
Come on.
exponential infinity, that is. Infinity exponents.
Crazy. People really don't think, do they? No.
Yeah.
Here's another one.
Oh, I think it's. This one was from the same post. Islam, because it's the most respectful religion and everyone should believe. Da, 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 da. I am picking Muslim because it's my religion and there's just one God. And that's Allah. One God.
I was trying to make sense of it until I realized what this is. Okay.
Crescent symbol all the way. Crescent symbol because they ain't afraid of anything but their God.
There you go. Crazy.
Oh, for Shire because Allah is with you. Heart.
Okay, just in case, for sure, because Allah is with us, all right? So
Yeah.
don't try and don't overthink this.
I know it's for sure, but I'm reading it as it is. For
Yeah,
sure.
I'm just helping because I automatically overthink this. This is why I'm telling people, no, don't do what I'm doing.
We all heart crescent star. I swear on Allah that the Muslim crescent star will never in our life use Muslim is on top, and that's on Allah. Prayer symbol 100%.
Unbelievable.
What did I just read? Muslim heart had the greatest fighters undefeated.
What
And
happened
heart-
100 years ago?
I don't
Don't they
know.
realize what happened to the Ottoman Empire? Have they never opened a history book?
I don't
no, they
know.
haven't.
And there's crescent symbol, heart, purple hearts this time, because it's the right religion.
Of course.
Ooh, Muslim because strongest. I think I already read this one. Allah with us. Yeah, I've already read this one.
Okay. Oh, the fastest religion.
Yeah, the fastest religion.
Okay, I don't know why I got this duplicate. Okay. All right. That is that. Then I'm going to do this and this. and this, and this, and this, and that. And we have finished the Krazy Comments segment. The next segment is our Koran Korner.
It's puzzling. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this before.
Okay, I needed that time to open the file to go and take this out, and we are here. Now, remember we finished chapter 10 last time. So what we're doing now is we're starting with chapter 11. Share a screen, which is this one. Okay. I can make it a little bit bigger. There we go. All right. Chapter 11. Just as a warning, we're not going to be able to do all 20 sentences, I think, because we need some time for the video. So we might have to stop a little bit early on the sentences, but don't worry, they're not going to run away. And we will be carrying on with this, of course, then next time. Now, chapter 11 is called Hud. Now, the funny thing is, there is no explanation for this. It's a name, which is those who ask forgiveness. But then on the other hand, some people say, no, it's not only a name, it's actually a prophet. And they say, well, there's a prophet in the Bible, which is similar, which is Eber, Hud, Eber. Yeah, very similar. They're almost identical. And because they are so not identical, people dispute this and say, no, there's no way that this can be the same guy. But because they don't really know what is happening, nobody has decided. So they just say, why does this chapter have the name Hud? Allah knows best. Well, there you go. So it starts again with what I think is an initial of a scribe who will just, put his name there, ALR, I'm the one. I am, what's the name with A? Ahmed.
Ahmed, you could do Amar as well. Amar, Amar.
And then
so you
LR.
could do
So
LR, Amr, Liaqat, Raza.
There you go. So this is this Ahmed guy. He wrote this because he copied this. And then the next guy, because he found the name on the page, said, this is part of the Quran. I need to copy this. So he just put it in there. This is the only logical explanation that I have managed to come up with. So, yeah. So he puts there, ALR, this is what he copies, and then a book explained in detail with perfect sentences. Now, again, for people who are not familiar with this, what I do is I take a sentence in the Quran, and this might be quite long and quite detailed and with a lot of insignificant stuff. So I leave that out and I just put the essence of the sentence in here. So this is what I'm trying to do. Now, if there's anybody who sees a mistake and that I've left something significant out, please, I'm just a human being, come and correct me. I don't have a problem with being corrected at all because I learned through that. So this is what I do. So I shorten it so that we don't have to read all the waffle, but this is the gist of the sentence, which tells me that there's a book which is explained in detail. Now, we've laughed ourselves silly with this because nothing is explained and everything needs to be interpreted and everything needs to be sort of human adapted. Oh, by the way, Rationalizer says hello, and we should please go and acknowledge the beautiful zakat sign he has designed on the top right-hand corner. So this is new, and this helps pay for the servers and all that, and he gives you an update of everything that he's done there. So he's now put a zakat in there, not a donate or something, but he's called it zakat. I think it looks quite nice, and he's very proud of it, quite rightly so. So I thought I will point this out. Okay, so Rob was kind enough to put up the Quran just to demonstrate the point. So I'm taking the ALR, the Alif Lam Ra, and then I take a book, perfected, its verses, moreover explained in detail from the all wise, all aware. So I left out some details here, like the one all wise, all aware, because this is being repeated 50 million times. So I don't need it. So what I took is just that it's explained and that it's perfect. So these are the two bits of information that I think are pertinent, and this is what I put into the sentence that I put there.
Yeah, and I asked it. I don't know if you were there, Stops, on Discord. I asked this Muslim about this. Is this a perfect book? What is the best book? What is perfect? And his response was essentially, like you said, Allah knows best. It is the best book. I said, what are the criteria for being the best or perfect or whatever the case is? What might we expect from this? And his response was, it's perfect the way Allah made it. So at this point, of course, we can just dismiss this, right? That this is, and I like the term from Jeremy Koons, the philosopher, who coins it along the lines with the Euthyphro dilemma. It's unintelligible. So it's not unintelligible in the sense that you don't understand the sentence, but the sentence has no content value. You can't weigh it up with anything that we understand. Because if we were to say perfect or best, we have some criteria, which we could discuss, right? And potentially we can come to some agreement on what criteria it is, what does it mean to be best or perfect? And then we can establish whether that's the case. But if there are no criteria, then the sentence is unintelligible in the sense that we have no way to ascertain any content about this. And so that's exactly the response this particular Muslim gave. And I said, well, you're just throwing in the towel then. Then you can't argue that it's perfect, and nobody ought take this seriously. We can just hear you making this unintelligible sentence, and we just move on and go, yeah. I mean, anybody could say that about anything. Could say, I've got the perfect voice. Or what's your criteria? Well, I know best. Is anybody going to take that seriously? Of course not.
Exactly. And this is why this challenge, the so-called challenge, is so simple. No, so I'm trying not to say stupid, superfluous. Because how can you have something that is like the Quran? And then you say, well, this is what I did. I said, I'm taking all these 29 ALRs. So I'm saying, okay, O my G, LOL, and there I've made something like the Quran. Because I've produced 29 of these letters. So is it like the Quran? Yes, it is like the Quran. But people don't understand or accept it. They're saying no. And then another guy said, well, you need to bring witnesses. Well, if you bring witnesses, so what? No, this is so stupid. Okay, sentence number 2. I bring warnings and good news. So worship Allah. I don't know where the follow is that this is supposed to be I bring you this and this, so therefore that. I don't see that. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, but I don't see what this is supposed to be. So this is, for me, a typical non sequitur. Number 3 says, say you're sorry, and you get a limited happy time. If you turn away, you will be punished. Now, I don't understand this at all. If you repent, why would you get a limited happy time? Does that mean if I do something that this God does not like, and I then say, oh, so sorry, mister, and then I'm going to be happy for my lifetime here on earth? Or is this what they mean by limited happy time? I have no idea.
I think they mean limited time on earth, that is, because there is this concept that, oh, this is the temporary life, and then that's the permanent life. Hereafter, that is.
It almost seems like a mafia threat to me. Like, apologize right now, and I'll let you live whatever life you have.
It's also possible. That's interesting. Yeah, okay. Yeah, this could be.
Yeah, so it says here, Yusuf Ali's translation, he may grant you enjoyment, good and true, for a term appointed. That's an interesting term he uses. And even in Sahih International, it says he will let you enjoy a good provision for a specified term and give every doer of a favor his favor. So it's more of an exchange thing. If you do good, I'll give you this much. If you do good, I'll give you this much kind of deal. So it's like I think it's like kind of like receiving blessings too. So it's like a temporary blessing.
Yeah, is it referring to this life or the afterlife?
Yeah,
I think it's referring to this life. It's specifically referring, like it's not specific, but that's what I'm getting out of this. It's like it's referring to this life.
Well, how does a Muslim reconcile this with life as a test? And I've often asked this Well, I haven't actually often asked it. I've asked it a few times. I should start asking a lot more.
Oh yeah.
You know, is the greater the test, the greater the reward? And presumably by test, we mean something that is not comfortable or good
Challenge,
or whatever the case is, right? If it's a challenge and it's something that's hard or uncomfortable, is the greater the test, the greater the reward? And when a Muslim says yes, and then I point out to them that they ought, put themselves under a greater test, then you kind of hear the backtracking. I had one person, I said to him, why don't you go to Yemen and help the people out there, or fly out to China across the border and try and see if you can free the Uyghurs or whatever the case is. Presumably that's a greater test. And then I proceeded to hear, the excuses for why he can't do that. He hasn't got enough money. He's got a family. I said, do you believe in the greater the test? Is it a greater test? And at this point, of course, it became the same sort of thing. Well, it is a test, whatever I can achieve, right? So it becomes one of these unfalsifiable claims that, again, is unintelligible because there's no way to ascertain what the greatest is. So all of these statements, as we hear more and more, is just simply people repeating what they've heard, but there's nothing underneath by which we can ascertain whether this is the greatest or how we could even come to understand this. And so a lot of this is just vacuous unintelligibility in the sense of it not having any content value.
Yes, okay. So what's interesting, and you guys pointed it out, he says he gives an enjoyment for a term appointed or a specified time. So it seems like, okay, the reward is temporary, but then if you turn away, the penalty is of a great day. So they basically, this is where it gets confusing. Is it this life or is it the afterlife that is? And in the afterlife, based on the deeds, is it like a short term you're given and then you just have to extend those terms, or what is it that is?
Well, it could be a mix. It could be the limited time here and then the punishment later.
It could be, that could be the case
but
too.
The time here is not necessarily a good time, and if you believe that you're under a test, and the expectation is that you wouldn't expect to have a good, pleasurable time here. You would expect the opposite. And if it is in the afterlife, presumably if you get to heaven, there isn't a time limit on that, unless the view is that you can actually disobey God in heaven. In which case, what, can you be thrown out of heaven?
Yeah, that's a good question.
You jump at the chute and you end up in hell.
So when you start to ask these questions, you find that they don't have a lot under the hood, right? It sounds nice, but if you start to engage your brain, you go, well, how could this be the case? What are we talking about here? And presumably maybe there's a Muslim who's thought about this and will come up with something and we can critique that. And we'll likely find that, again, it just sort of, gets buried under, a bit of scrutiny.
And I'd like to point out the eloquence here. They always say they are so bowled over by the beauty of the Quran, and give every owner grace his grace. What the hell is that? Is that really the best a God can come up with? Come on.
And it's like a doer of a favor, his favor, in another translation. So grace is grace, favor to favor. And grace
is life.
But this is the whole thing it goes back to. It's sad that I have to keep beating the same drum. Is this what we would expect from a God who wants to send a clear, concise, complete, and error-free message to all of mankind? And I specifically asked that question of a Muslim, right? And they say yes. And I say, is this the expectation we would have, where it's sent in this language that many people can't understand, that hasn't actually been preserved, that has to be interpreted into other languages that are not an exact replication? What would we expect, or what could we expect? Obviously, the best thing is just a direct message to every single human. But if for some reason, God knows best and he doesn't want to do that, well, then send that same message around the world in their own language. And when you look at the two, they match up as closely as is godly possible, even though it's in a different language. And I asked the guy, hey, you've had these 124,000 messengers. What would we expect if these messages have gone out around the world? We'd expect it to be, as close as humanly possible or godly possible, that the messages are the same, that you have this one God, etc., etc. And what do you look around and find around the world? You find exactly the opposite.
And not only
gods,
that,
multiple gods, etc. Some don't even have a God. The opposite of the claim. So either these messages were crappy messages, or the response was, hey, get this, right? The response was, hey, but these messages were sent and they weren't preserved. And so Islam had to come. So I'm like, whoa, Are you saying that God specifically sent a crappy message that couldn't be preserved so that Islam came along? That sounds very convenient. Was it not the case that he's supposed to send out this message with the greatest message for all time? Would you not expect it to have been kept in a way that didn't get corrupted? And then I don't really hear very much, right?
And what's a good point is that, you don't, of these 124,000 messengers, supposedly, there is not a single record of these messengers, historical or archaeological record of any of these messengers ever coming into existence. And this is just a claim that this was the number of messengers, and we only hear about the ones in the Middle East, and that's it.
Yeah. And I just saw a comment by Jimmy. The thing is that I read somewhere that there is more anti-Semitism in the Quran than in Mein Kampf, because he was just bringing up that let's say the eloquence or the quality of the text in Mein Kampf is better than the Quran. And I heard some of this thing about anti-Semitism, so this is quite funny, I think.
Yeah, no, I actually have a theory as to why it's so cryptically coded. I think he just wants to send more people to me so they can party. And
yeah, exactly. Why would you tell people how terrible it is in hell? You would do the opposite. You would tell everybody, come to me, I've got the pool party. You can sit in very nice cozy water by the bar and I will serve you drinks. And this is the kind of a story that the devil would really, hand out to people, and not this terrible thing, you will be burnt, you will be tortured, you will be punished. Come on, what kind of a marketing message is that?
But try this with any Muslim, right? Any of you guys, and maybe you've done it before. I've got my own way of doing it. But how did they establish that this book came from this perfect messenger who is all good, right? And they will give you that something will come out of their mouth. Yeah, something will come out of their mouth and they say X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And then the question is, how can you establish that it isn't another being that has ulterior motives that you are unaware of and is making you think this is the correct case? What is it you can point to go, that's not possible because X, right? And again, maybe some words will come out of their mouth. And what they really need to do in order to overcome this is to say, because all I'm going to say is, well, that's exactly what a malevolent or a being that has ulterior motives would have you believe. So something they need to say that would make it, whatever they say, impervious to that refutation. If they can do that, now we've got something we can talk about. Here's some content they provided that I would agree with them and go, well, a malevolent being couldn't possibly say or do X. Good luck with them.
That's a very good question. Very good question. I'd consider that. Yeah, you go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, and I have an extension question to that, almost, where it's like, why do people consider Satan as so wrong or bad? Because if he's truly the punisher of evil, like, he's punishing the bad guy. Why is he so bad?
Well, it all goes on faith, isn't it? Because they think God is good. They can't establish it's good, and they shout it from the rooftops. But then when we inquire, we find out they don't have a basis for what is good other than to claim it's God's nature. And then we can go down the Euthyphro dilemma, and we can show that even if you try and claim it's God's nature, that doesn't get you out of the problem. In fact, it just makes it ends up being unintelligible. And so,
yeah, but Rob, that they don't understand it, because this is exactly what they're doing. They don't see the consequence of what they are saying, that they're giving themselves, they're getting themselves into the same identical situation where the dilemma still is applicable all the way through. They don't think like that.
But yeah, no, like, as a neutral person coming in and reading this guy looks like a BDSM slave, like, master kind of guy. Like, bow down to me 5 times a day and I'll beat you, or else I'll beat you and burn you for eternity. Yeah.
Yeah, then they want to claim it's all merciful, right? We can go into this later on. But would an all merciful person do X and Y, right?
So we don't know. The Quran says it's explained in detail with perfect sentences, and 2 sentences later you see the exact same contradicted. It's the opposite. It's not perfect, not explained. We don't know what it means. I don't know anybody who will be able to give a coherent, consistent, and substantiated reply, or explanation. Number 4, you will be returned to Allah. He is all powerful. I don't quite understand. Who is saying this? You will be returned to Allah. This sounds like Allah is talking. He is all powerful. It's said by Allah, but then it says they fold up their breasts and hide, but He knows. Now, is that spoken Muhammad? Is that God? Who is saying this? Because in the Quran, it is not clear whom this is addressing or who is the origin of this. They fold up their breast. I mean, we know that Allah is not too clued up on biology or anatomy. Folding up their breast means they are trying to hide their thoughts, because they think, in those days they thought the heart is the origin of thought. And this is why if you fold up your breast, you are hiding your thoughts. But he knows. He knows. This is God. Okay, I'm very confused by the Quran here. I have no idea who is saying what and why to whom.
This seems more like a sermon, if you ask me. Like, it's not exactly like. It seems more like someone just copied a sermon into the book. So you see here, behold, they fold up their hearts that they may lie hid from him. When they cover themselves with their garments, he knoweth what they conceal and what they reveal, for he knoweth well the inmost secrets of the hearts.
Okay, who's saying this?
Well, again, you could argue, go on.
No, you go ahead.
I think you can just argue perhaps this was being said to Muhammad, he was passing it on so that humans would understand it. I'm not sure whether that would be a big point to bring up in the sense of who's saying it. They could say it is Allah speaking, but he's speaking in the third person because it's easier for it to be communicated that way. And presumably this is just some sort of metaphor. Because as you say, if you were taking literally, how is it you fold up your heart and so on and so forth, right? So whenever somebody hears this, they have to, unless they're going to give some sort of explanation, they're going to have to say, well, yeah, he kind of means X, Y, and Z. But then you can always ask, could you not explain this a bit better? Because that's not the best way to explain this anyway, or the most concise and clear way to do it.
Stops. I think you got the translation a bit wrong, though, because the translation or abbreviation is essentially hide your titties because I'm watching them.
Sentence number 6. Everything alive gets stuff from Allah. He knows where it lives and stores stuff. Okay, this is just showing off. Number 7. He created heavens and earth in 6 days. His throne was over the water. He might test you. If you say you will be resurrected, non-believers will say that's magic. Now, this is one of these sentences with 15 different topics in it. Remember, there are some topics which take 15 sentences, and this is the opposite. So there's all sorts of nonsense in here. I don't know why they had to mix all these things into one sentence. I would have I split them up into sentences, and each one for me is a different topic. Right? So, he created heavens and earth in 6 days. This is a copy from the Bible. Throne was over the water, also a copy from the Bible. Might test you. Well, this is Islam. If you say, non-believers will say it's magic. Well, we all know that. Now, there's a funny situation here. We've had this before, and I thought, okay, let me do the following. He created heavens and the earth in 6 days. All right, so this is where we are. So we are in 11:7. It is he who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. Okay, so we have two different versions here. We have 6 days, which is repeated 5 times, and we've come across this in chapter 7, in chapter 10, and I've always pointed this out, but I've never put this side by side. Now, here in 49, it says, you see here it says say, and then he's talking to Muhammad. But it doesn't say that in the previous one. So this is what got me a little bit confused. Anyway, so this is disbelieve verily in him who created the earth in 2 days. Not 6 days, 2 days. He placed the infirm hills above it and blessed it, measuring it for 4 days. So he created the earth in 2 days, and then, beautified it or completed it or whatever, another 4 days. Then he ordained the 7 heavens in 2 days. So 2 days plus the 4 days making adjustments and 2 days for the universe is 8 days. So which is it? Is it 6 days or 8 days? Now, the way that Muslim apologists do this, they say, well, the 4 days actually contain the 2 days. But that's not what it says in the Quran. So we don't really know what is happening here. And why is it in 6 days? Now, in the Bible, we get the explanation, well, it had to be in 6 days because on the 7th day he rested. So what was Allah doing on the 7th day?
Yeah, that's a good question. And not only that, if you even look at here, it takes Allah like two plus 4 days to work on our tiny planet. Our tiny planet. And it takes him, if we even count the 7 heavens, which is the other 7 planets, it took him 2 days to create those other planets, larger bodies than compared to the Earth.
Yeah, and take it in, Mustafa. He had to spend 1 day to rest so he can make sure you're covering up your titties.
Oh
Yeah,
my
probably.
goodness. So yeah, this is very not only scientifically inaccurate, but yeah, there's a big contradiction right there with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 verses in the Quran.
Yeah, we'd have to look a
thought
bit
this
more
was-
closely, as you say, Stops. If they're going to make the apologetic that the 4 goes, those 2 days fall into the 4, we'd need to see good reasons for that.
I don't
and
see it.
it's not clear there. But again, you know, a Muslim can just take whatever, you know, he finds. And so I think we need to have good reasons. But we could argue and say, well, why are you taking that? Oh, because it matches the other ones. Well, is that a reason to take it? Is it as clear as it could be, right? Because a couple of verses ago we heard that it was a perfect book in the sense of perfectly, you know, laid out and with detail. And if this is supposed to be detail, then I think it's clear that you can make this far more clear than the way it is here. But then again, if they're going to argue that, hey, it's just not clear in English and it is in Arabic, all you're saying is that the message hasn't been sent clearly and perfectly in other languages, and we ought not to accept it or indeed become a Muslim unless you can learn Arabic first, get a clear, quote-unquote, understanding of the Quran, and then do a conversion. And imagine that was the criteria, because that would be consistent, isn't it? If that's the case, then that would be the criteria. Imagine how few Muslims we'd have on the earth.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
think let's stop there.
there.
Yeah. All right, let me share screen for our video of today. And this popped up in my feed, which is why it is. It's a video of a few years ago, 2019 at least. That's when it was posted, as you can see here. And it's our good friend Shabir Yusuf. And for those who aren't familiar, this guy is a master of sophistry and obscurantism. And what I specifically mean by that is that he doesn't answer questions clearly or concisely. He does exactly the opposite. He makes ambiguous statements and then turns it around and asks his interlocutor questions such that he never has to actually in any way defend or clearly answer the questions that are put to him. And in this video, we started about 1 minute and 9 seconds in because they're just talking ahead of time, and we want to keep it to the main part. So they're going to pretty much start now. There will be an interruption when somebody joins them shortly. You know, where somebody walks past and speaks to them, and that part we'll cut out. So when we get to that and this other guy comes in and starts speaking, then I'm going to just move past that, because that doesn't add anything to the conversation. And so here you'll see Pavlov asking Shabir something. We'll go from there and then we'll stop along the way. And of course, my co-host will shout out loudly, stop, if they want to say something, or I'll stop if we need to. And we'll just see what actually happens here. But notice, I want to prime your brains ahead of time. Notice what happens. I want you to focus in on what Pavlov asks him and what his response is. And notice the language that he uses when he responds. Is he clear and concise, or is he exactly the opposite? Right? And see what happens here. Imagine you were there having this conversation. Play in your head, what might you say in response? Because this, I think, is one, you know, kind of good way to become better at listening to interlocutors and thinking, hey, how might I respond? Because otherwise you kind of get taken in with the conversation. And really, for me, it's like stepping back and looking at this, go, okay, what might I do, and how do I identify when somebody's, you know, not being an honest interlocutor? So with that said, let us begin, and you guys just shout out loudly when you need me to stop.
So what are we going to talk about?
Just about the Creator and why he doesn't believe in it and why you do believe
He says he's an agnostic.
Yes.
What does that mean, agnostic? I don't
Good
know.
idea. He can tell us.
All right. So the difference between atheism and agnosticism, which is something that many people confuse, is that an atheist thinks that God doesn't exist. Now, an agnostic is not sure whether God exists or not. And that's what I think is the most logical perception of the world. Because seeing that our senses are flawed, and all knowledge that we have comes through our senses, then it means every conclusion we make is inherently flawed. Because the way for ourselves, the way for us to perceive those conclusions, that information, is flawed. You know what I mean? That's why I doubt the existence of God, even though God might exist. He might exist in a way different than what we perceive. What I don't think is very logical is to believe in an absolute entity that forces humans to obey his or her absolute justice. And I have.
Let me just stop there quickly. So his view on agnosticism, or the reason he's agnostic, is because we're flawed. I don't think that that's a good reason. I mean, by that lights, anything you say is flawed. So you are, to me, if I was speaking to Pavlov, I go, okay, so are you agnostic about everything? Are you agnostic that aircraft can fly, for example? And then he might come back if he's going to try and be consistent and defend this view and go, well, yeah, I don't know if it's going to take off, but we have prior background information. So I don't think it's a good reason to be agnostic, just to say, hey, the reason I'm agnostic is because our reasoning is, or could be flawed. I don't think that's a good reason. To me, the agnostic position is somebody who's undecided on the proposition, for example, Allah exists. Why is he undecided? Because he's heard, reasons on both sides of the fence, and he's not persuaded either way. To me, I think that's the most straightforward and logical way to be an agnostic. So I just don't think this is a good argument personally. But let's see now what happens when he's talking about this, sort of God that tells people what to do.
I have this question. I've made this question to many religious people. I'd like to make it to you. What does God love more, his justice or humans?
Okay, so just remember this question in your mind. I mean, even write it down as you're listening to this, write this question down or burn it into your mind. What does he love more, justice or his humans, right? That was the question. And I want you to remember, we're 2 minutes in here, and this entire thing lasts 26 minutes minus about a 3 minute interruption where somebody else comes around. And tell me at the end whether you get a clear answer to this question in the next 24 or let's call it 23 minutes, okay?
Yeah, I wrote it down.
Remember the question. I want you, everybody, because I might just forget it as we go through anyway. What does he love more, justice or his humans, right? That's the question that's posed at the very beginning.
The presumption.
Quick one here. I know I'm stopping very quickly. Notice, did you see what Shabir does there? Now, Stops and I know this, all right? But I want to point it out for people who might not have picked up. Did you notice the gap there? And notice the body language. If you stop this and you play this back again or look at this video yourself. In fact, I'll share this video. Let me share it so people can all go and watch it themselves at some point. I'm going to copy the video and I'll just very quickly put it into the chat here. You can go watch this yourself. But these sort of things, because Stops and I have done quite a few of this. Obviously for us, this is very quick. But did you see what happens there, right? The brain is turning and you see the body language there. It's very short. It's only lasts a couple of seconds, but he's like trying to work out, how do I respond to this, right? And
but
because he's somebody who...
panic.
Correct. Well, I don't know if I'd use the word panic, but it's a case of like, what do I say now? It's like,
shit.
Yeah, there's this level of, I'm kind of, this is a left field question. I'm not used to this. I haven't heard this before, or I can't remember it, or what am I going to say now, right? So the cogs are turning in the brain there, and you can see the body is unsure, right? You get these kind of movements where you're just not sure. And so remember the question now. That's the question that's been asked. We know what the question was. Let's see what his response is now.
Here is being made that there is a creator.
I'm not making that presumption.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh wait. Fair enough. If we want to entertain the
You've got to.
You're right.
You have to start with
the God exists, exactly. Let's assume the God exists. Yeah. Let's assume your God exists.
If we were to assume, I don't usually say my God, your God. There can only logically be one creator. So if I were to take that view, then logic would dictate to me that by definition, and if we look at all cultures, whether
with a cooker tab, you
that.
always have 100 degrees boiling, filter chilled and
This is why you get free.
You don't have.
I'm on a different laptop. Sorry, I'm on a different laptop, and normally that doesn't come up, so I'm not sure why it is now.
Okay.
Apologies for that.
Okay, while we're stopping, it's a very good idea, because he is wrong in saying logically there can only be one creator. That's bullshit.
Yeah,
logically there can be many creators.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I picked that up and I was like, okay, we'll let that one go. But you're absolutely right, Stops. You'd have to have an argument why there couldn't be a multitude. And in fact, I have heard an argument, I might still have it on Discord, from a polytheist who has actually got a proper logical syllogism why polytheism is more likely than monotheism. And so there is actually arguments out there, philosophical arguments, that are attempting to show that polytheism is in fact more likely than monotheism. So it's not the case that it's logically the case. He would need to make that argument. And if you had the polytheist argument, imagine that I'd love to see, right? Imagine I had that polytheist argument, you put it to him. You go, hang on a moment, I don't accept it. Here is an argument for polytheism. I'm going to read this to you. Can you tell me what's wrong with it? Imagine trying to do that with Shabir, right?
Yeah.
Actually bringing him a logical, because he's using the word, right? A logical philosophical argument that has been put forward by somebody who's a polytheist, presumably, and has thought about this quite deeply, because the syllogism, i.e. these premises and conclusion, when I read them, I went, yeah, that's, on first glance, that looks reasonable. I don't see anything glaringly wrong with that. Now we can look at a bit more nuance, but I didn't see anything at first glance that threw up any sort of red flags. But like I say, imagine trying to do that with him, right?
And Beej's also, there could be a committee of creators. Exactly, there could be a team. One does the blacks, one does the whites, one does the whatever. So whatever criteria, the people with black hair, with blonde hair, could be different gods. I mean, who knows? And why?
But just much easier. Exactly. But much easier is just to ask, what's the argument that it's logically ought to be or is necessarily one creator, right? That's the question, because we could postulate all of this, and then the response is, okay, can you provide an argument for that? Right now you're on the back foot when the claim was made that logically there's only one creator. So the question is, and it's something we just need to keep remembering for all of us, and Stops and I sometimes forget, even though we've been doing this for a few years, what's the argument for that? Why is it the case that it ought to be or is necessarily one creator and not more than one? Now he would have to provide an argument.
Rob, I'm very proud of people in the chat. Okay, I'm very happy, very proud of the people that they are picking this up instantaneously as it happens, and this is brilliant. That we know we have people here who are paying attention, who are listening, and they're hearing these things, these little nuances, and they're saying, "Hang on, whoa, it's not warranted." And I'm very happy that we have people here who can pick these up, even though they haven't done this for years and years and years. So excellent stuff. Thank you.
View, according to you, is inherently flawed. Right across the cultures, there is the idea of a creator who is supremely powerful, by definition, who created everything. And if that be the case...
Again, right, this is all waffle. This is not answering it. By definition, why ought we accept that definition?
Yeah, he hasn't even touched the question yet. That's the funny thing, because the question is, what does he love, assuming the God, his justice or his humans? But he's already going to the creator part. Like, no, that's not the question I asked.
Well, Mustafa, you got to give him a chance. It's only been like 16 or 20 seconds.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, almost a minute, actually. We started at 2:20, I think. But again... it's not the case that it's, why would we accept that definition, right? He said by definition, and said, well, why ought one accept that definition?
Yeah, exactly.
And then you could go down that route, because you can't, here's the other thing I thought about recently, because I've been having conversations elsewhere with sort of people that are a bit more high level than this.
Where? How do you find them?
Well, no, not Muslims, unfortunately. So it's more with a few Christians and other people that think more clearly. On that other server I sent you on Discord, Stops. But the thing I was thinking of is that you can't get to the point that he's supreme, right? The only way you can get there, it seems to me, is if he'd communicated and told you that's the case. Because if it hadn't been the case, right? Because here's my argument. I think that the claim that a God is supreme, whatever that is, so all powerful or whatever the case is, you can't get there by reason alone. So the only way you can get there is if he communicated, because it's either a case that a God is a deist God or is a theist God. If he's a deist God, he hasn't communicated with you, and the only things that you could say for certain, or you could reason to, is that has some level of power and he created the universe. Right? Those are the only things. You can't say he's all powerful. You don't even know if he still exists, what his intentions are, or anything else. He's not communicated. So we can rule out the deist God. Then all you have left is the theist God. Well, what's the difference between the theist and the deist? Well, the theist God has a personal, supposedly some sort of personal relationship, or has communicated with humans. And that necessarily needs to be the case in order to make the claim about some of these other attributes, because you can't get there without them. So that's my argument as to why we can rule out some of these. So, now I'm much more tuned to this, which is something that it's been more of a recent thought on mine. So if somebody gives me a vacuous or a minimalist definition, as it's called, that sort of thing that he gave there, I'm going to go, well, that claim is unknowable. So I need more attributes. You need to give me more information such that I can make an evaluation of this God claim, because I'm no longer going to accept what I consider unknowable God concepts, absent you giving me the criteria by which I could know those properties or those attributes. So just having these very minimal things, I'm no longer going to accept. I'm what's called, I've sort of modified my position, I'm apatheist. And an apatheist is somebody who doesn't care, who's not interested in those claims. I'm not interested in the ones that are unknowable. I'm only interested in the ones that are knowable. And by knowable, they would have to have communicated so that we can get some of these other attributes.
Then logic would dictate that it is what the Creator says to us, which would be necessarily the view that we should hold about the Creator. So,
okay, just listen to that. The Creator has given us the view logically that we need to hold about. This is just a vacuous statement. This is some words coming out of the mouth in a couple of sentences that is actually completely vacuous. He said nothing of value there. It's like a tautology. We ought to breathe air because we need air to breathe. Thank you for telling me nothing of value.
You can see what he's doing. This is like a text box. So he's playing back a recording in his brain while he is thinking on how to actually answer the question, and he cannot come up with anything, so he carries on about his Creator. And I think only 10% of his brain is engaged in playing back this script that he's developed at some stage, and I think 90% is trying to think, okay, how am I going to answer the question? Because for me, he's not focused on what he's doing. It's like rattling off this soundbite.
Yeah, it's going off in the long grass, right? These are red herrings where you go off on the sidetrack. And what actually happens here, the questioner, and watch Pavlov now over time, the questioner forget the original question they answered because he's gone off on these tangents and taken them for a walk. So if you come across people like this and they start to waffle and take off tangents, you just need to get back to the original question. Sometimes that happens for me, and I'll go with them for a little while and then I'll just bring them back again, because I want to see if they've got anything to say, if they're going off in a direction. It depends on my, how I feel and where we are in a conversation. But I will allow that to happen to a degree. But like in this case where he's waffling and saying nothing substantive, what was the question I asked you again? Can you repeat that back to me? And can you give me an answer to that? Because that means you don't have to repeat, and it puts them on the spot to actually say to you back what the question was. And most people, the question is in and out of their brain, right? If they're not experienced, interlocutors, or like this guy, they're trying to involve tactics. He likely won't remember the question, and that'll say a lot. And he'll waffle around this, and eventually it'll be clear that he cannot remember the question because he himself has forgotten what he said because he's gone off on this tangent. And so that's a way to bring them back as well.
So if you were to ask, does God love justice more than he loves humans? Well, which one would God love more? Well, the first question I would ask is, why the distinction being made? Unless the Creator has provided us with that distinction, it would not make sense to me.
What the hell was that supposed to mean?
So
is there anybody who can explain it? He actually repeated the question back, maybe because it was so short, it was only been 1 minute and 20 seconds, so he remembered
I was impressed.
Yeah, he did repeat the question. Now
answer the question.
Yeah, now he's not answering the question. He's trying to shift the burden onto the questioner, that is. That's what I'm seeing right now.
Correct. So he tags the question on the end, which is typical of some people. So they'll either give you a surface level response, and that wasn't even a surface level. That was, hey, let me repeat the question, but why is this even relevant, or whatever the exact question was that he answered, but he never answered the question at all. Now Pavlov, if he's not careful, and I don't think he will be at this stage, is actually going to end up answering the question. And once you start answering questions, then the question that you asked is forgotten, and you never get an answer. And so that's where you have to be a bit more forceful, especially when you notice this going on. Hang on a moment, I asked you this question, can you answer that? And then I'll come back to your question. Because the moment you answer it, there'll be another question after that, and another one after that, etc., and the question will be forgotten.
It's because with the assumption we're making, with the assumption to entertain the idea of a God, which we are entertaining right now. We are kind of, I'm imagining that I'm believing in God right now. God, at least the God of Muslims and Christians, the monotheistic God, is justice. God dictates justice, and that's the only justice that is real.
Hey Rob, can you pause it for a second?
And God.
Is there any other arguments or something happening in the background that will be relevant to what's going on here? Because it almost seems like there's like a riot for this guy.
No, this is just how it is. There's background noise. This is Speaker's Corner, so you will hear people talking in the background. They have got a mic on him that you can see there, but no, there's nothing else relevant to this conversation that you will hear. You just hear some background noise, so you might have to listen a little bit more closely. It's not super clear because of some of the background noise.
All right. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't like you did mention that there was some interruption in between. So I was thinking there was some like.
Oh no, it'll come later when somebody actually walks past and greets him, and then comes in and gives his 2 cents worth that isn't really on the topic. So we'll cut past that. You'll see it clearly when this guy comes along.
All right. Yeah.
God, supposedly, at least according to your religion and to the Christians, God loves humans. God has a lot of love for humans, and yet, every time humans go against God's justice, every time humans transgress on God's rules, on God's justice, he punishes humans with no mercy, absolutely no exception, unless eventually they decide to submit to his justice. If they do, he forgives them, blah, 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 they go to heaven. Now, Michael, my question to you is, if God always chooses his justice over humans, does God love humans at all?
Okay. I would suggest that your reasoning is flawed, and I'll tell you why. You see, for you to assume that the Creator punishes all the time, you know the mind of the Creator. Do you?
Okay.
Can you pause it for a sec?
Go ahead.
Well, he clearly has a book where he's going to tell you that if you do not follow this to a T, he's going to send you to me. So I see whose logic is flawed here, and it's not agnostic Pavlov's.
Yeah. Go ahead, Stops.
No, this is cringeworthy. It's terrible that, okay, this is what we say to people again and again and again. Don't volunteer the contents of the Quran to a Muslim. Let them say it. Ask the question, what does it say in the Quran about this? Or what does Islam say about this? Do not volunteer your information, because now he's going to just turn around and say, well, you've got it all wrong. So it's the typical reaction. I mean, you can see exactly where this is going, and it's such a pity.
Yeah, I think Stops is right in this case with the ask the question, right? Is he does his in the occasions when he invokes justice, does he still love humans at that point? Because if you make the claim that he invokes his justice under all occasions when they transgress, that may not be the case unless you have you've got evidence of that. So if you make the strong claim rather than putting it in a question format, then you are, as Stops has pointed out, now he's going to say, well, I disagree and show me why, or ask you to justify your statement. And really what you want to put it as a question. The moment
it could be that there's one exception. That's all it takes.
Yeah. And so now we're going to go off. So I think the claim was a strong one that he could have rather just asked, when somebody is being judged, is there still a loving God that's doing that? Or is this a God that is foregoing his, well, Muslims don't, although some of the sources does claim that God is all loving. But as far as I know, the Quran doesn't say that. And so really the idea is that he's all merciful. Now you could equate that with all loving, although that might be a bit of a stretch. It depends. We'd have to have that conversation. But if he's merciful, then obviously he's foregoing judgment, and if he's judging, he's foregoing mercy, especially, and here it'll come back later, right? Especially if he's all merciful or all just. Those two together, you could say somebody's, partly merciful and partly has justice. So when somebody's being judged, instead of bringing the full might of whatever the punishment, you lessen that. Right, so now you're still using some judgment, but you are invoking some mercy. But that's not the claim that they're making. He's most merciful or all just. And those two together can't coexist. That's a contradiction. So the moment he does any judgment, he's foregoing mercy, because mercy would be the absence of judgment, and judgment is the absence of mercy. If you're talking about all or most, in other words, it can be any higher. But that's one that's not clearly elucidated by Pavlov here, unfortunately.
And you need to remember, they always have the get out of jail card for free, because they can always say, well, at the end of the day, and that's what the Quran says, the ultimate decision is still up to Allah. So he can still go and reject Muhammad from going to paradise. We don't know, because it's still up to him.
Well, you're the one who believes it.
No. I'm going according to your reasoning.
Your
reasoning, Pavlov.
Okay. Right
sorry.
Now,
if we are going to, no, I'm not going to play a game.
Sorry?
I'm just saying, it's biting him now.
Yeah.
If we are going to have a conversation, it should be a two-way street, Pavlov. Now, I'm going according to your reasoning, and I suggested to you it was flawed, and I just told you how. Now, what I'm saying to you, Pavlov, is this. Look, I have no problem with the way you are thinking, but that thinking is flawed in that.
Okay, this is a contradictory statement. He does this a lot, right? And this is another linguistic trick. I'm okay with your thinking, but da-da-da-da. As soon as somebody says but, it's called a negation. It negates what you said before, right? So he doesn't agree with his thinking. Or if he does, immediately you want to jump in there and say, okay, you said you've agreed with me. What is it that you agree with on my thinking? But then you'll get some more waffle, right? And so you just got to realize that what he's actually, when he says I agree with you, he's actually saying I disagree in your mind with this particular individual. You go, okay, he's just disagreeing. He said he's agreed, but he doesn't actually mean that at all. This is just a linguistic trick to get your defenses down. But now he's going to tell you why he actually disagrees with you, even though he said he agrees with you. Unless he's going to say, well, I agree that you have reasoning or that that's your position, which is utterly trivial, because we could say that about any statement. You could be in the strongest argument against somebody, go, yeah, I agree you believe that. Well, who cares? Obviously, the person agrees that you believe it, or you agree that he believes it, but that's a trivial statement. It has no value. So what is it that he's actually agreeing with, right? So you've either got to delete it out of your mind and just say that's bollocks because he doesn't agree with anything, or specifically ask him what he does agree with. But this is just a tactic that he uses, and he does it a lot. If you watch any of the videos, he'll say this and then say but or whatever the case is afterwards and negate everything he said before.
That unless and until you can confidently assert to me that you actually know exactly the mind of the creator who we are assuming to be existing, then only can you actually address the view that you are holding.
Notice what's happening here. Go on, stops you first.
No, you interrupted.
This is ambiguous language, right? Yeah. If you play this back, and we could do, but it won't necessarily, but I'm going to take my word for it. I've done this quite a lot, especially with this guy. This is ambiguous language, and it's specifically designed, because this is used in therapeutic interventions, to confuse people. And you might go, well, why would somebody want to do that in intervention? Like if somebody has psychological issues, because what it does is it opens up the mind and it allows you to work with them in a way that perhaps they wouldn't otherwise be. And this patterns are quite effective under certain circumstances, but they are ineffective and dishonest in conversations like this, where you want clarity and concise responses. And so this vague language like this, he has actually said nothing. All he's basically said is, hey, you think that this creator is perfect and I'm using your logic, so now you need to kind of demonstrate that. But it's this ambiguous language, because now the person goes, well, what is it that I'm saying again? Because everything is this vague generality statements. And so it gets the person to suddenly go, okay, what are we saying here? That's specifically what this is designed for. And he's good at doing this. So I'm pretty sure he knows exactly what he's doing here, but it's not an honest tactic in this sort of conversation.
But there's another thing I just noticed or realized. Actually, he keeps on harping about this. Then the motivation and the thoughts and the brain and everything of God. Well, yes, we do. Because this is what is being revealed to us in the Quran. This is where the God says, listen, if you do this and this, I'm going to torture you forever and ever. So we know very well that this is a narcissistic and highly jealous and like with a huge inferiority complex guy who really doesn't know what he's doing. All he says is, look, you need to trust me, you need to be loyal to me, you need to believe me, you need to do as I say, or else. And that is it. So we know a lot about the mentality, about the thinking processes of this God, because it's described in the Quran. So there's a lot that we can say, yeah.
Which you cannot. Yeah.
You're right. Even if I believe in God, I can't assert exactly what God
You cannot,
thinks.
exactly. Now, unless...
Okay, but you can read the book where God apparently tells you what he says or believes or whatever the case is. So you don't have to know the mind, but you can read a book that supposedly these guys believe does exhibit some of God's thinking, right?
Yeah, exactly. So why is he saying that? Yeah, I disagree with Pavlov. Why is he saying you can't?
Yeah, because of the way it was phrased, right? In his mind, he's not thinking, because it was phrased like, you don't know the mind. Well, it's true that he personally doesn't know the mind, but he does know what the book says that supposedly does give us an insight into the mind.
Exactly.
Until the creator, I can't. And now I was about to say, unless, not at all.
Can't be sure of religion.
If I was just going to finish. Unless and until the creator tells us what the creator is and how the creator views the creation that the creator created.
Notice how often he says creator there, right? Again, this is just ambiguous language. But of course, that is the case because you guys have got a book that you claim comes directly from it. It's directly with perfect transmission what he himself tells you. So of course you have got this information you got, and depending on how you read the Quran, you've either got this perfectly or completely or whatever the case is. Obviously, we don't think that's the case, but you've got a book that you guys believe comes straight from it. So what are you talking about?
No problem.
My standing is yes.
Yes. So you know what the creator thinks and what you
No.
want.
What the creator thinks, I didn't say. I said the creator has told us what our position is with the creator. Are we a created entity? Yes, we are, according to the reasoning. If we are a created entity, then it behoves the created entity to try and find out what the creator wants for this particular created entity.
Now somebody comes in. But
no, not yet. Carry on.
He's going on and on about the same thing, not answering the thing. He's carrying on about the creator, and then if there is a creator, then we have to go and take the creator as being the creator. Okay, great. But now, does this creator actually value justice or humans? That is the question. And he still doesn't answer it because he says, well, there's a creator, and what we know about the creator means that we know the creator. But he doesn't answer the question. He has not started answering the question yet.
Correct. And he's saying, well, it behooves us to find out about the creator. Well, the book is, the book that you claim came from the creator does just that, apparently, according to you, does it not? Is this book not telling us about this creator that you say it behooves the creation to find out about? Well, he's got this book. So what are you talking about? All we have to do is read the book. Now, Pavlov has either heard or read something about it, and that's what he's asking you. And it comes from the exact source that you're telling people behooves us that we ought to read. Like Stops and I and our co-panelists here have read this book, right? Or what? So that's where we're getting this information. And what we're doing is an internal critique. So we go, okay, let's assume, as Pavlov does, that your God exists, that he wants to send this message, and that this book is this message. Now let's have a look at that, and let's analyze that and see whether it stands up to scrutiny. That's what we're doing, and that's what Pavlov's doing at a sort of higher level here.
Created entity.
It's
a tank, yeah. The created entity. Okay. Now, logic would dictate, if we were to take this reasoning forward, logic would dictate that unless and until you establish exactly what the creator's message is to the human being, all the questions that we are asking somehow become just for the purpose of a game. As you
okay, if you go watch any of his other videos, he will use this exactly the same line. Logic will dictate, if and until you know about the creator, we can't continue. But of course, as we've pointed out multiple times now, there is a book, and so we do know what this creator says, and that's what Pavlov is asking. Hey, because he's got this justice, which your book talks about, I'm asking you this question, because it doesn't seem to, I don't have a clear, answer to this. And so he's saying, well, until you go and do all of these things, we can't proceed. But of course, we can proceed because either you've read that little bit, which is enough to ask this question, and he apparently has some expertise or at least claims to have read the Quran. So what is he talking about? Of course we can answer this question. But this whole if and until you've done right? Trying to put the criteria out there such that you're not in a position to come and ask this question or to have this conversation until you've gone and done X, Y, and Z that I've told you to do, essentially. Right? That's kind of the inference that he's saying out loud here to the person. You're not in a position to do this. Which is bollocks, of course.
You rightly said. Yeah. Exactly. So I wouldn't view it that way. Yeah.
That's very well said. That's exactly one of the reasons why.
The way I would view it is that, look, unless and until you have understood exactly what the creator says, and this you can't take from another human being. It has to be for yourself. Exactly. Yeah. It has to be for yourself.
Okay. So if it has to be for yourself, how do you do that? Because we're all reading the same book and we're coming to different conclusions, and we all want to understand it as clearly and honestly as we can. So how is it that we come to these different conclusions? Either it's the case that we're not able to understand it, or one of us is being deceived, or we are being intentionally deceiving, if you like. How do we establish what the case is? Right. So if it is clear, then we should all come to the same conclusion. We read and go, that's what it says. Right. If you read the verse about the pork, it's pretty clear that you don't need pork unless, it's your survival depends on it. Unless you take some other view, which we won't talk about right now. Right, that seems fairly clear. So there are some verses that are reasonably clear to understand, and you're not going to get any disagreement. How come the rest aren't like that? And, we've done that. So what's the problem here? It's like he's putting a gate there. It's a gatekeeping exercise, this.
For yourself. Now, unless and until you have established that, any question in relation to what the creator thinks, says, with a view to humanity, is going to be pure speculation.
Can you see there? All he's done there is now put himself outside of having to answer the question. And if you watch, like I say, his other videos, this is his technique. Hey, you've got to do da-da-da-da. Until you do this, essentially we can't have this conversation. That's what he's done here.
Even by yourself, if you interact with God in a certain way by yourself, your interaction still goes through your senses, and thus it's still not a perfect interaction.
Sorry, say that again.
Even if you interact with God yourself, your interaction still goes through your own senses, which are flawed, which means you will not realize God for what exactly He is, for what He truly is. Plus, let me just address something else. You're completely right. I can't, if I believe in God, I can't assert for sure what God wants, what He believes in. But do you agree that people go to hell if they disobey God's justice?
Right, excellent.
Okay, now I think that's quite good, right? He came back to that question, right? I think he got a little bit off track there asking about that, but it's a case of, yes, you don't know if it's a generic God, you might not know his intentions, but if it's a God that has communicated with humans in a book where he's explicitly displayed or put forward his intentions, then you can know that, at least if the book is, if we're doing an internal critique and you're claiming the book is true, then we do have access to at least some of his intentions, and that's what we can talk about.
You have said this the third time. You have used disobeyed God's justice. What is the definition of justice according to the Creator?
What's written in the Quran?
What would that be?
The laws by which you abide, by laws by which you live.
Laws have nothing to do with justice.
Of course they do. Justice is built by laws.
No, if I can.
Excuse me, laws have nothing to do with justice?
Mustafa,
that is what justice is based on.
Exactly. That's what you that's the purpose of laws, like to deliver justice or to punish those who have done injustice to others. Such a stupid man. Like, I would beat this man with my criminal code and all my law books. I'm going to beat this man with those things.
Well, as it happens, that's exactly where this conversation is going to go. And this is something, again, as a message, if Pavlov ever watches this, right? When he says, what I did like was where he said, hey, what is justice? He said, what's in your Quran? And then he said, what is that? And then he gave him, well, it's the laws. Don't volunteer that, because now it's going to go off in the direction of the judiciary, right? Modern judiciary as an example, which takes you completely off track, because that's what Shabir has got, does, or whatever is involved in. He's involved in some level in the judiciary. He's not a lawyer as far as I know, but he's involved in some level in the judiciary. So now, because Pavlov brought up the laws and so forth, it's going to go off in that direction. Stick with the question. Well, your Quran tells you. Can you tell me, Mr. Muslim, what is it that invokes justice? You've asked me, I don't know the exact things there, but your Quran says it. Can you tell me what the Quran says is what it means to, impose justice? And let's see whether, going back to my original question, that is something that you can answer, and how does it relate to whether he loves humans or his justice more? So put the question back on him. Don't volunteer some explanation, because then you're liable to have to carry that through. Unless you're clever enough to concede and go, do you know what? I didn't mean that. Let's scrap that. Let's go back to your question.
You see this?
No, I can't see anything. I'm obviously just looking at
okay, because somebody is saying Shabir Ali. This is not Shabir Ali. He says Shabir Ali would destroy Stop Spamming. Not even Shabir Ali would be able to destroy me. And this is not Shabir Ali. This is Shabir Yusuf. So, but please, set it up. I mean, I've challenged this guy many times. He's always run away. He's too shit scared of it. Set it up. I'm game. Tell him.
I can just, you see, if somebody has gone through red lights, the law finds him guilty. Do we agree? You see, Manshur?
That's justice, yeah.
No, now.
That's the system of justice we have.
Now, that is the legal system.
So,
justice is applied by the judge.
Sorry, guys.
Program online, but
I apologize for this. I can't stop this on this particular laptop. I'll remember to use my other laptop next time.
If I go through red lights, okay, I've broken the law. If I go into the magistrate's court and I provide sufficient reason, which...
Okay, so there'll be an interruption here. As soon as I notice that it's an interruption, we'll just skip 3 minutes forward. This guy just comes in and he just goes off and speaks to him as if Pavlov can just sit there waiting while he has a conversation, instead of the other guy waiting until the conversation, there's a natural break.
I would walk off.
Are you okay? Are you all right? Yeah, I do apologize, Pavlov. Yeah. If I go to the magistrates and the magistrates apply justice, and I give them sufficient cogent reasons for why I went through, they would let me off. Is that justice?
As far as I know, the term justice system and the term legal system are synonyms.
Okay, he's kind of going off on a tangent. And here's the other thing to remember. He went down this route. Right, so again, let's be clear. If you went to the judge and you said, hey, I had to go through that light, I couldn't see it, or one of the lights wasn't working, or it was raining, or whatever, maybe that you could provide a reason that the judge might let you off. He's still done some sort of justice. He's taken it into account, and he's invoked some mercy. Because if it was clear that whenever you went through a red light, no matter what, another good example is if you have an ambulance behind you. Right? If you have an ambulance, you may go through the red light or partially through the red light to let the ambulance through. Although I wouldn't do that in the UK because people have been fined for it, by the way. But it's another example. But if that were the case, you could find some extenuating circumstances where he might invoke some mercy, and he could still have some justice has been done because he's taken these factors into account, and he's then given you, either let you off with a reduced fine or whatever the case may be. In that case, you could say there was some level of justice, some level of mercy. This does not apply to God. Let's remember this, because God is all merciful, or most just. He cannot give you one of the other. As soon as he gives you some mercy, he has to reduce the justice. It's not all just anymore. So, but at that stage, one of those attributes has to be reduced. And so this example does not apply to God. So you've got to be very careful. If you ever go down on the all just, all merciful route, don't allow them to bring in human examples, because it's not analogous with the God example.
So we're playing games of semantics with words that mean exactly the same.
Pavlov, you sound, I do apologize. Are you going? Yeah, okay. Look.
Okay, let me just see. I think now we have a little bit of this other guy jumping in here and talking nonsense here, and I think he moves away eventually here. So let me just move forward. He's talking lots of nonsense. So I apologize for this, but we wanted to jump forward. We don't.
It was good that you watched it.
So again,
it's good that you watched it, because I didn't.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was quite derailed, the conversation. But
it's okay. I know where we were when we stopped. Yeah, right. Basically, no, don't worry. I will tell you. The last thing you said was justice and the legal system are used synonymously.
Yes.
Yeah. I said no, it doesn't work like that. Yeah. Like I was just telling you. I just gave you an example, and I want you to follow that through. The example was that I went through red lights. It's illegal. I was then taken to court. The judge now applies justice. I give him very cogent reasons for why I had to go through the red lights. And he applied the law.
The legal system?
If I can just... If he applied the law says that if you go through, X is the punishment. He looked at the reasons, we call them mitigating reasons. He found that I had sufficient cause to have gone through, although I broke the law. The judge announced an absolute discharge. Is that justice?
Okay, so I've answered this already. Unless the other guys want to add something, I think it's clear that you can say that he has pronounced justice, or justice has been done, because he's taken these mitigating factors into account. But that doesn't apply to God. So this example is not relevant to the question that Pavlov originally asked.
Justice is very open to interpretation.
Why?
Because every country has their own legal system, has their own.
Okay, this is a bit of a derail by Pavlov here. That's not relevant to the question. Shabir asked him, has justice been served here? It's a yes or no, and then you qualify after that. There's different justice in different countries, right? That's not an answer to the question. So Pavlov, if you ever watch this, that wasn't a direct answer. You should be either answering the question, which you shouldn't necessarily be at this stage, but it went down this route because you brought up the word law. So you've got to be very careful with what you bring up with these guys, because it gives them the ability then to go off on a sidetrack.
Their own way of living. You know what I mean?
Hey, Keith here from Finish
how many times are we getting this?
This is your completely
Man, I'll never do this again. Sorry, I humbly apologize.
That's not the issue, though. The issue that you are addressing and I'm addressing is this. Did he apply justice?
I assume you want to make a distinction, like the
No, I'm not assuming. I'm asking you, Pavlov, respectfully. Let's answer the question and then proceed. No, you seem to be reading off a script here, Pavlov. I'm not asking you that.
The irony of him accusing Pavlov of reading off his script.
Irony.
Yeah, that irony is not missed, I think, by anybody who knows this individual. the script that he uses is plainly on display in virtually every conversation he uses. There'll be these script words, these same sort of responses that come out every single time. And the Muslims just lap this up. If we look here, you'll see here. The sad part is he, presumably Pavlov, thinks he's so smart. When this arrogant agnostic's argument was broken down by Brother Shabir, he started to get emotional. Lol. Etc. Right? So you can see there, they just think he's the greatest thing since sliced cheese, right? And this is how, sadly, brains are so easily tricked by, almost. And I'm not saying he's a con man per se, but this language it tricks the brain into thinking he's saying something where he's in fact saying nothing of consequence. But the interlocutor has some part to play in that. That's partly why we're reviewing this as well. If you're an interlocutor with somebody like this and you recognize this going on, you need to kind of reevaluate quickly.
No, just answer my question, Pavlov, respectfully. I'm asking you, Pavlov, a simple question. Did the judge apply justice?
In which situation?
The one that I just gave you.
Repeat the situation.
Can't you remember? I did it twice, Pavlov. Twice.
Okay, so this one is, we have to point out when it's fair. This is Pavlov now not remembering. It was very clear that you went through the red light and you got an unconditional discharge. You've got to pay attention to what your interlocutor is saying as well. I understand that Shabir waffles a lot and so forth, but this is a time where you've got to focus in. And if you had answered the question in the beginning, then you wouldn't have forgotten it and required Shabir to re-ask the question. I think it's very simple. Yes, there was justice done because there was this mitigating factors. But then immediately after that, you've got to now say, and how does this apply to God? And then that's where he's now on the ropes. But you've got to be aware enough to be able to do that. So you can answer the hypothetical and then show why, or this analogy, and then show why it's disanalogous straight away. Otherwise, it gets lost in translation. So you've got to be very quick with this. I think, Stops and I have done this quite a while. As soon as Muslims bring up an analogy, 99 times out of 100, if not much better, that I'm probably being charitable, it's disanalogous. So we can answer the analogy, otherwise it looks like we're dodging and don't want to answer a question, but then immediately show why that doesn't apply.
Yes, I repeated it.
Repeat the situation.
You can't remember.
You don't want to repeat the situation.
No, I can, but it seems like you're not listening.
Do you want to repeat the situation or not? Or do you want to focus on whether I have been listening or not?
No, you haven't been. Because if you did,
because
twice.
we're playing games of semantics.
No, you are playing that respectfully, Pavlov. I gave you an actual
you might
example.
Say respectfully as many times as you want. If you don't act respectfully, it doesn't sound like your words have any meaning.
I agree, but that's what I'm asking you to do.
Asking me to do what?
I've asked you 3 times the same question. I gave you the same example twice.
No,
and you can't remember the example I gave.
Fair enough.
So are you going to answer the question?
What was the original conversation again? Ah, yes.
You want to say something, Stops?
No, I thought it was significant that he was saying, look, you always say respectfully, but you are not being respectful. And this is correct. He's constantly, it's excellent. No, it's not excellent. He's constantly making these funny noises, and they are like totally the opposite of what he's doing next.
Yeah, kind of the same thing where he says, I agree with you, but, right? It's that linguistic trick.
Yeah. And this is now, but Pavlov actually picked it up and pointed it out, so it's good.
Yeah, but now we asked him, right? So, so to be honest, I mean, Pavlov's a little bit on the spot. He doesn't remember. Yes. He just had to say, do you know what?
Totally.
We said a few things there. Can you please repeat the question? It's not a biggie.
He thinks that by answering, he is going to put himself into a hole. And this is why he doesn't really want to answer, because he doesn't understand the consequences. He doesn't know where this is going. I remember I was in the spot with hijab when he said, but then if rational equals, I don't know what. And I said, no, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I am not going to go there because I did not know where he was going to go with this. So I can understand the situation. And I just didn't answer. I just said, I am not going there. So he is doing the same thing here, but in this case, it wouldn't be necessary. He could just say, yes, justice has been applied, but not mercy. So that's it, end of story.
Yeah. Or if, like in your case, where you have that, you can just ask, well, how's this relevant? Right, and if somebody's going to just say, well, you'll see it, then you can kind of go with, okay, if we're going to have an intellectually honest conversation, how is this relevant? And then once I understand that it is relevant and you've given me a good reason, because at the moment I don't see the relevance. So like you say, Stops, I don't want to go down the route that I don't see as relevant. Provide me the relevance. And then, if I see it's relevant, we can go down that route. Then the person can
reason.
Then they can reveal their hand, for a better word, right?
You said the word and it triggered it. It was actually this. He said, rational is equal to reason. And I said, no, it's not. Anyway, so I said no, and I said, look, this is irrelevant. I'm not going to go there. And then he gave up. But so I can understand that, because in the beginning it was also this, okay, what am I going to do with this situation, because this is quite silly. And I can see from the body language that this is exactly what he's doing at the moment. He's cringing. He's trying not to answer because he doesn't know what he's getting into.
Yeah, and to be fair, if you've never been in Speaker's Corner, right, you have cameras on. There's normally a crowd that you might not see here because they might be behind the camera, etc. It's not like sitting at your desk or behind a computer. There's more there's more eyes on you, etc. Now it takes some while to get used to, but once you are used to it, it's not too much of a big deal. But in the beginning, and ego plays a big part here, as much as we all want to say it doesn't. Even for me, I'm sure if I look back at some of my videos and go, okay, here's where I could have conceded, here's where I could have said something different. I often think about those things. And it's just, if you haven't been there, you just won't really understand what's happening here. But same time, we've got to be honest and say, if Pavlov had answered the question the first time, then it's not a problem.
Would have been easier, yeah.
Yeah.
You can't remember. To answer the question of what does God love more, His justice or humans? And you derailed it to what is justice.
Yeah, so this is a good point, and it's a good bring back, right? Now we're going back to the original point, and mostly because he was stuck in answering this, but in a way it served him because it focused his mind on what was the original question, right? So it is good to bring this back again. He didn't answer the question, which is, we made that point clear, but that was his original question, and quite rightly, Shabir hasn't answered this, and we've gone off in the long grass, partly because of Pavlov volunteering some information that in hindsight he shouldn't do. Rather ask a question, don't volunteer information, because it allows them to go off on these tangents.
Not
at all, Pavlov. I actually said to you, your reasoning is flawed. And then we moved on. But having said that, Pavlov, respectfully, and I say this, and I mean it, I gave you a real-life example. You didn't seem aware of it, but I told you. No, you are going back. If you can remember that, how come you can't remember the example?
I don't know exactly what God wants us to do.
Right, excellent.
Okay, so he thinks that if he says your reasoning is flawed, makes an assertion, well, that's all dealt with. Hang on a moment. People who are a bit more experienced, they go, no. Just because you assert something and claim that my reasoning is flawed doesn't mean that's the case. And if you make a statement to try and back it up, well, now I'm going to challenge that statement. Unless I agree with it, I go, do you know what, you're right. Based on what you just said, I can see how my reasoning is flawed. But if you don't agree with that, then you're going to challenge the assertion. All he did, as if we remember, he said, hey, I think it's flawed, and he gave an assertion about why it was the case. Then if you got to challenge that assertion at that moment in time. And I don't think Pavlov, if memory serves, challenged it strongly enough. And so now he thinks that he's dealt with this and showed why the question was flawed. So in his mind, now he's never going to answer that question, right? Which does God care more about, his justice or his humans? Because that question by Shabir's lights, or at least that's what he's communicating, the logic is flawed, which he thinks he's shown, and therefore he doesn't have to deal with that anymore. So now he's bringing up this example, which isn't, how is this relevant, right? How is this now relevant? That's the question to ask. How is this example relevant to my original question? Is it showing the flaw? If it is, can you elucidate this? Because we're, whatever minutes in now, we're 15 minutes into this. And, I asked you the question way back when, just cut to the chase. How is this analogy showing that my question is flawed?
Another way which I found to be quite successful is to go and say, all right, it's not really relevant, but if I answer your question, can we then go back? And this works because then you say, I will answer the question, there will be no further comeback, and then we will go back to the topic. Is that okay with you? And that works because then you answer only the question. You say, yes, justice has been served, but that's not the point, and now let's go back. And then he has no way out. And this has worked in the past for me, where I will say, okay, yes, I'm going to answer it, but then we stop and we go back to where we were, and that's it. And this works.
Now you're in the same boat. You don't know what God wants us to do.
And you are entitled to that opinion.
Criticize me on not knowing it.
No, you're entitled to that opinion. But in terms
okay, so this again, you need to nip this in the bud. If you hear something like that, you're entitled to your opinion. That doesn't constitute an argument or a rebuttal, and anybody could say that, and you can just say it back to the other person, and you're entitled to yours. And what now? Right? Just show the facile nature, the idiocy of making a stupid statement like that. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. It's a trivial statement that adds nothing, and in fact, it reflects negatively on you as an interlocutor to make trivial, useless statements like that. A statement that anybody could make. Pavlov could say it just as well to him, and we're no further along in the conversation. It's just wasting time.
No. In terms of criticism, there isn't a need, because the flow, the thread, you missed it. I will repeat it again. Pavlov. Yeah, I gave you an example about justice.
Okay, so here's where, you need to be the flaw, the thread you missed. Okay, give me specifically, without the example, what the flaw, the thread is that you think you're making. That's the question to ask here to keep him focused, because all he's going to do is repeat this example, get Pavlov to agree, and just stick around what he knows is the justice thing. This in no way actually relates to the original question, because and Pavlov isn't asking, hey, how does this relate? But that's the question to ask you. This thread, tell me specifically what this thread is. Don't give me the example of the law thing again. Tell me how this quote-unquote thread is relevant and what it is that you want to get to. Because I've had this myself. The very first time I spoke to him, we went along this chain and he made some ridiculous things. And it's just like, the first time I heard this, I was like, how do we, how's this helping? Or where are we going? And his response, if I remember correctly, is don't worry where we're going. Right? Which again, that's a big red flag. Because an honest interlocutor says, hey, here's where I'm going to. And I just want to ask questions to see whether we can get there. Here's the goal I want to reach. Right? But if you want to be a bit sneaky, then you want to withhold that goal to see if the person will answer, to see if you can get them and go, look, I got you there. So, but an honest interlocutor say, well, here's what I think, and this is what, I believe. And if we answer a few questions, I think X, Y, and Z. Like I would say to somebody, hey, for example, I think that well-being ultimately underpins virtually every moral system that I'm aware of. And if I ask you enough questions, I think that you will eventually end up saying something analogous to well-being. Do you want to present your moral system? And we'll see whether that's the case. I've now shown my hand. Right? It might be that somebody tries, the danger of that is somebody tries to then circumvent it because they don't want to accept it. But I think, if it's rationally the case, you'll get there anyway. And they don't have to say the words. You just have to show that that's where the pathway leads, as an inductive or deductive argument. And they can't really get out of it if you've got people who know what's going on and they're paying attention.
Okay? And
another thread.
Not at all. It's the same thread. Unfortunately, it went against your reasoning. And I can see that. But I will repeat it anyway for your benefit. Going through red lights, it's against the law. I am brought before the magistrates. I provide the necessary reasons for why I went through.
Which are?
The judge now is going to apply justice. He heard my reasons for why I went through in mitigation, it's called. After having heard it, he acknowledges I went through the red light, but his judgment was an absolute discharge. Do you know what that means?
Guilty.
But did he apply justice?
He did.
How?
he dropped the ball himself. He said that the judge applied justice. If you rewind this, which I won't do now, because I listened to it there, Shabir said that the judge applied justice. So, and now he's asking Pavlov, did he apply justice? And if you were paying attention to the words, you would have said, well, yeah, and you agree because you just said he applied justice. So you listen to them. Sometimes they give it away ahead of time as well.
Because according to the judicial system, according to justice, the system, to the laws of the country, I, who went against the lights, was judged not guilty. Whether because the lights messed up, whether because I was distracted by another, for any reason. It is justice.
Was justice applied?
It was.
How?
Because he's just explained it to you. Like, did you not hear exactly what he said? He just said to you how justice was applied. Right? He just said it in like literally, it took him less than a minute to do it. And now you ask the same question again, is justice applied? He says yes, and you ask how. Right, at this point, if you are speaking to this person, now it's time to be a little bit harsher with somebody like this and accuse him, hang on a moment, I've just explained it to you, were you not listening? Can you tell me what I just said? I'd do the same thing to him that he tried to do to Pavlov about asking him the question. He's just explained it.
He decided I'm not guilty.
He broke the law.
It's not only punishment.
Excellent. Now, take that reasoning forward. Who created? We are assuming there's a creator here. The creator created human beings who have developed justice systems in which it is clear that even in applying justice, they are being merciful. Who gave us that ability?
Well, if we believe in God, then yeah, God.
The creator did. The supreme creator who has given us this ability to be able to apply mercy despite the rules going against us, how would that absolute entity apply justice?
By punishing us, of course.
Can that same
if we transgress
can that absolute justice also apply mercy?
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's right. So now we can know.
There we go.
Right?
Yeah.
No, you can't, because absolute or most just is in contradiction with most mercy. So if God applies his justice, most just action, or whatever the case is, then he cannot apply any mercy. Do you agree or disagree? If you disagree, can you show me how it can be the case that God is all just or most just in any particular case and can apply mercy at the same time? Because to me, that is a contradiction. Can you, Shabir, provide an argument for that? Right? And see what happens. You won't get a straight answer, but at least you can see what kind of response is going to come out of his mouth.
Hey, stops as well. There's also a small comment as well by Why So Religious.
Read the last comment, or how? What? Oh,
Yeah, so
your
it
last
says
comment. His last comment.
Yeah,
so
his.
if you break, okay, let's quickly. If you break Allah's law and then disregard the question on the day of judgment, did he apply justice? Well, no, he didn't. Same question that guy's asking General. Well, Robert's just explained it. Yeah.
Yeah, if we submit ourselves to his rules. If we submit
again, have you noticed, Pavlov? You are answering the question with a precondition. When there isn't a need for a precondition, why are you doing that?
What do you mean?
You aren't seeing it, are you? You are not seeing it. Okay, I will tell you.
I'm not seeing where you're going with this.
No, not where I'm going. It's where you thought you were going, but you can't. Anyway, what I'm saying basically, Pavlov, you are always there's a precondition you are applying when you are answering the question. When I say mercy, you said, well, unless it is this, then it can be applied. I'm saying no.
There's nothing wrong with that. If that's the case, then you need to make that clear. Yeah, it's part of it, right? There's nothing wrong with adding or making it clear. Yes, I'll answer it based on this precondition, because that's what this precondition is we're talking about, or it's involved. Now, you might have to give an argument for it, but there's no problem with answering with a precondition. That's not a problem. You might have to justify it, but that's, if you feel you can and you justify it, then do it. It's not a problem.
No, there isn't a need. When you are dealing with an absolute entity, these ideas of ifs, buts do not apply. Because you are dealing with an absolute entity. Unless you understand what that absolute entity is, you are still going to be confused.
Contradicting himself.
And respectfully,
he's contradicting himself. How can he say, well, yeah, justice has been served, and now you can do mercy, and then he says, well, you can't because it's absolute. So he's just saying the opposite of what he said 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, I mean, this is all sophistry, right? He's not saying anything of interest here. This is just obscurantism, and it's designed to confuse his interlocutor. And if you're not familiar with this, you will get confused. You go, where are we again? And it's all designed around this.
Yeah, no, I just want to ask, in terms of contradicting himself, the question I would essentially ask him is that he brought up the idea of a judge before providing justice for showing him mercy. But in that case, in a justice system, we have the ability to appeal. For someone such as a highly moral person, why isn't that the case for this absolute entity as well? Why can we not know his reasoning?
That's an easy one. Okay, that's an easy one though, Nick. They will respond and say, but hang on, he's absolute, he knows all. There's no requirement for appealing, right? Humans can make mistakes, they're fallible, their justice might be marred. We know, for example, that if you are judged by a judge prior to lunchtime, you are likely to get a harsher sentence. They've tested this. You don't want to be in court and having your judgment happening before lunch. You want to have it after lunch, right? I bet most people didn't know that. Right? This has been tested in court. So there's factors weighing in on judges, which is why you can appeal this. And with a God, you don't need that, because the God's judgment is absolute and perfect and all that sort of stuff. So that's why you don't need an appeal, or you don't need to have that with a God. That's how they might respond. So that's not a difficult question for them to answer within their own worldview, of course. Because God is not going to make mistakes. He's not going to be hungry and therefore likely to give you a harsher sentence than he would if he hadn't eaten, for example, et cetera, right?
Yeah, and another quick question would be that where is the proof that he has shown mercy? Like in a cart, let's say, take his exact example, you're driving like 25 in a 20 zone, and then you get a ticket by a cop, and then the judge, even if the rules state that, you only have to go 20 and that you got a ticket, he'll let it go. Where's the proof or an example that this happens in this court, where is the showing of mercy? Because obviously every single person that breaks even the little bit of rules, even not if it's their fault, they still get sent to hell. They have to like submit. Even if they submit, they're going to get a limited amount of time according to what we read before, and then still sent to hell after.
So is your question, where does God show his mercy in the Quran? Is that the question you're asking?
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of occasions. I think isn't there at least one that immediately comes to mind is where Muhammad made a mistake and God, admonished him, whereas, there could have been a much harsher punishment for that. So it could have been that, in that case, God said, hey, Muhammad, you did this wrong, you got this wrong, but I'm sure you guys could come up with many other ones as well. I just don't have it off the top of my head. But I think there are examples in the Quran where he's invoked some sort of mercy that we could all agree is mercy. The question is it all merciful? What does that actually mean, and how do we establish that? Is there some criteria by which we can go, yep, you see what? We couldn't have been more merciful. That's, I think, a much harder question to ask, but I think there are examples where they could bring forward where, he's been at least somewhat merciful, where he could have been more judgmental or shown less mercy. I don't think that's particularly difficult to do.
Yeah, and sorry to bother us with so many questions, but like the last point would be, if he is all merciful, why does he have a set of rules that you need to follow in the first place? If he's just going to ignore all that, why have them in the first place?
Well, obviously the rules are there because people don't know what to do or whatever the case is, and so he's giving them guidance. So you need some rules to tell you what to do. I mean, we could talk about that. I think that'll take us off track. Maybe that's something for another stream where we can talk about that. So maybe make a note of that. We can talk about it next time. But I don't see a problem with having rules and then invoking some mercy. If the people or your creation don't know what to do, we could talk about how that could have been better for sure.
That's what is happening here. So, if you heard
if
me,
you don't, then who are you to criticize me?
I'm not criticizing you. I'm observing. What I'm saying to you see.
Nice dodge, right? I'm not criticizing. Hey, well, I'm just observing you too, and I'm observing right? That's what we're doing here. This is an observation. Surely this is not a review or a critique of Shabir by his own standard. We're just observing and offering our observations, right? Anybody can play the semantic game.
Pablo, honestly, should I tell you something? I know you are younger than me. I will tell you.
Yes,
I will tell
the
you.
younger.
No, I will tell.
I am older than you, and thus I know it better than you.
Pablo, I'll tell you.
Age doesn't always is always equal to actual knowledge.
Well, actually, people who are older would wait until the other person finishes before they interject. Young people do that, and you've just done it. Right. Anyway, I'll just say it anyway. You see, Pablo, at the end of the day, what we have to try and do, if we want to learn, we must be ready to accept our long-held notions to be demolished. That is how we will learn. Unfortunately.
And
this is
yeah. No, I was just gonna say, like, this is the exact same thing that like any apologetics person for any religion would be doing, because they do the exact same thing where I'm older than you. You gotta, when you come to me for my knowledge, you gotta break down your pillars. And it's the same bullshit that we hear all over the place. And
that's just a trivial statement, right? It sounds like a deepity. It's something that Daniel Dennett called a deepity. Sounds like something profound, but it's in fact entirely trivial. We've got to reevaluate our position if we get kind of new information. Well, thanks for telling us what is trivially the case, or ought to be the case. Is that the case in your case, Shabir, right? Or anybody else's case for that matter? Yes, you're telling us an ought that is trivial. So what? Again, this is not informative. It's not interesting. Anybody could say anything, right? Immediately, for me, I always just bring up, do you know what, Shabir? You're absolutely right. Can I just share with you here something interesting as well, that all humans need to breathe air? And I'll just stop like that, immediately like that, and let it sink in that I've said something entirely trivial and not have added to the conversation. It's demonstrably obviously true, but so what? How does that in any way add anything of substance to the conversation? It's demonstrably obvious that it doesn't do anything. Yes, it's true, and so what? We could make it. You could come up with a million examples.
Unfortunately, exactly. Unfortunately, Pablo, when you are wanting to have a conversation and you want to arrive at an understanding, then one has to, by default, try and understand the position of the other side that is speaking. What you cannot do is impose a certain way of.
Isn't Shabir doing the exact same thing?
Yeah, well, he's obviously, this is a hypocritical statement, of course, because his intention is not to have the other side understand his position, or in fact give a clear, concise answer so that somebody can understand his position. So yes, this would be great if in fact he lived by the same rules that he's putting forward here. The problem is he does the exact opposite, right? The obscurantism and the rhetoric hides what could be an otherwise potentially clear answer. Why? Because if he gives a clear answer, he's likely to come under critique or even stronger scrutiny. And to avoid that, he has this technique of obscurantism and rhetoric that allows him to avoid, at least for people that don't understand this, having to, to defend any claim. Right? I challenge you to go and find a video with an atheist where they've asked him a clear, circumspect question and he's given a clear, circumspect answer. Find me a video like that. Go for it.
Or speaking and expect everybody to fall within that narrow view, which is what I'm not doing with you. And
exactly what you're doing.
Not at all. I'm
trying to play semantic games with the word justice.
Will you allow
and
me
the
to finish?
Judicial system.
Will you allow me to finish? No, I just realized respectfully you didn't know the difference, so I had to make it clear to you. But having said that, you see, what I'm saying
is, really?
That's entirely your opinion. But at the end of the day, what I'm saying is, look, for us to learn Pavlov, we all have to accept what the other person is saying, listen to them, then if we disagree, provide the necessary reasons for why. But do it in the spirit of learning. At this moment in time, Pavlov, you are not doing that.
Pause it for a sec. Let me, this is almost like an angry translator, so I got to pull a translation here. So what Shabir actually means is, in order for you to be completely brainwashed, you have to come here without any form of knowledge, let your knowledge be demolished, and then let new knowledge enter into your brain so we can brainwash you more clearly.
I mean, he's just repeating himself again, as if he's giving Pavlov a lecture. I mean, the hypocrisy here is obviously, and the irony is not missed on any of us, giving Pavlov this thing as if he's now teaching him, right? Because this looks good on camera, doesn't it? But here's this wise Shabir telling this young upstart how he ought to behave, when in fact it's Shabir himself who should be taking this lesson that he's supposedly giving on board and altering his behavior. Do you think he'll be listening to his own words here? Nope, he'll keep doing the same thing, right? But it sounds good to the gullible ear until we break this down and we show you exactly what's going on here. Not easy to see if you can't spot it. But once it's slowed down and we break it down systematically like this, you can see it becomes transparent what's going on.
You are just not doing it. How can I tell? I'm older than you.
Oh, so seeing that you're older, you automatically have the knowledge to know everything about it.
No, I just said experience teaches.
That's an interesting conclusion, It means the oldest of people should be ruling mankind.
I just said experience. I didn't say about the brain. Experience. It's amazing.
The oldest people ruling mankind.
That's something you will learn when you get old. But at this point in time, you are young, so you have to learn.
I'm sorry.
So all of this is just bollocks and rhetoric, right? This is just to try and assert his dominance and show that he's wiser than everybody else. And as you see here, the comments just lap this up. Go and watch the video. The comments will go, look at this brother. He's just so wise. He said nothing of value here, made as if he's teaching Pavlov something, but it in fact applies to him, right? I know many other people that do this sort of thing. Tell other people what they themselves need to adhere to and implement themselves. Because it takes the spotlight off them, right?
Yeah, I would learn from Ronald Reagan. I would just turn around and say, listen, you're so old, you're senile. Just listen to me.
Yeah, there was that famous thing, right? If you use that Ronald Reagan thing. And I think that's what you're probably alluding to, Stops, right? Where his opponent, I can't remember who the opponent was, but somebody in the chat, I'm sure, will give us. But they had this interview with Ronald Reagan and his opponent. And Ronald Reagan was a bit older. And the opponent said something about Ronald Reagan's age. And Ronald Reagan was very good at this. He turned this around and he said to the other guy, I'm not going to allow my vast experience to override your inexperience. So he turned the age thing of being older.
I'm not going to hold your inexperience against you.
There we go.
Your young age against you, yeah.
Yes, I'm not going to hold your inexperience against you, right? I've got the experience, so age equals experience.
Exactly.
So all you do is, it's called certainly in certain circles, it's called a reframe. So you just frame it up differently. It's said age, there's a negative connotation sometimes with age. All you do is put a positive spin on it, and then it looks much better, right? Which is, exactly what's going on here. And like you say, you could do a negative thing as Stops have done and say, well, hang on a moment, sounds like you're going a bit senile here. You're repeating yourself over and over. Are you sure you're okay? I hope when I get to your age, I'm not like yourself, who has this rhetoric and repetition. Hopefully, you're not an example for me, are you? Or are you taking your own advice here? Or have you forgotten exactly what you've just said to me?
Passive aggressive.
Right, you could do it the other way, yeah, if you're in the mood to do that. But all of this is rhetoric, right? This is just time wasting. None of this is redressing the argument.
Fun.
And how far are we now? 22 minutes minus the 3 with the interruption. So
and also this this pause kind of makes it look like a MLM or snake oil salesman trying to sell something to an Indian dad.
Okay, run through the rest.
It is an argument.
It's a very weak argument.
This is
Just
the only.
because I'm old,
Pablo,
more intelligent than you. That's a very weak argument.
Without wanting to sound offensive, I have not at all, Pablo. I've had to
be very condescending already.
I'm not at all. I'm only observing what is happening here. You see, I made distinctions, but respectfully, they didn't fit within your purview. So you shut off.
You didn't
Then
make any
there you are. You see, no, between
between justice and judicial system. Okay, judicial system
Pablo.
has a slightly different meaning of justice, but justice dictates the judicial system.
Okay.
If you want to play word games, we can do it all day and night.
I didn't play word games.
I didn't come here to play word games. I came here to know your answer. What does God love more? Humans or His justice?
There we go.
Would you answer it?
Pablo, respectfully, I went through.
You need to keep saying respectfully.
I have to, because you're already thinking I'm.
Okay, we're coming to 10 o'clock, so we'll probably go on for just a few more minutes here, just so we can get to the. There we go. But he's brought it back, which is great. He's also pointed out this whole thing about respectfully, which is just a ploy. It has no value, and he's not actually being respectful at all. But he thinks if he says the word logic, respectfully, and other words that most people take to be, good, have some good meaning, that if you just repeat those words in and of themselves, somehow that means something. Right? So Pavlov's picked up on this, and he's asked this question again. Do we think that he's going to get an answer?
Well, the excellent thing I want to point out is that Pavlov is staying very calm, and Shabir is getting incredibly agitated.
Yeah.
Being offensive to you, which I'm not. But what I'm saying to you, Pablo,
You just said you're more intelligent than me.
I didn't say that. When did I say that?
You are older.
When did I say I was more intelligent than you?
You know things I don't because you're older.
When did I say I was more intelligent than you?
You said you know things I
Pavlov,
don't.
when did I say I was more intelligent than you? Are you going to retract that? Pavlov, are you going to retract that? You are not.
Part of intelligence
Then you are wrong.
is knowledge. The knowledge of certain things in the world that we observe. You said that you have more knowledge than me automatically simply because you're older than me.
No, you said that. You said that. I said experience. Absolutely, the camera is there. I said experience.
Okay, so now it's just a verbal jousting backwards and forwards. We're not getting anything back here. Again, yes, both egos are up here, but again, I think it's behooves just to go back to the question again, right? Not that it's going to be answered, but just to point out that it hasn't been answered. I think that's the thing. So it's gone off on a bit of a sidetrack here. But if Pavlov asked the question, I don't remember if he does again, but if he just said, okay, I'm asking you the question again, are you going to answer da-da-da, right? That just brings it back and gets past this.
And he doesn't, and he wouldn't anyway.
Yeah, but it's just for the audience to know, hey, this is what the original thing is, and this is gone off on a sidetrack.
This is the point. You're not. I can understand this because I block them out. They're so. It doesn't exist. It's only me and this guy at the moment. I don't perform, and this is also something that is wrong. And I would actually need to keep this in mind. I am not doing this for me, but for other people, for the benefit of others. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good point. I always.
When I ask you, how do you know what I'm thinking? I ask you, how do you know that? You told me because I'm older.
I'm older, and experience tells me why. That's fine. We
can give reasons for your arguments. You can't just say, I know it because I know it. I've been in Oxford, I have a degree, that's how I know it. You can't do that. You need to explain
Why not?
step by step.
Why can't you do that?
Because it doesn't make any sense.
Why?
Well, it's very clear. Yes, you can be in Oxford and whatever. What we care about is the argument and have you got good reasons. You could be a professor, you could be whatever else, right? That's great. And then I'm even going to expect better answers from you than I would from a layperson. But it doesn't matter who you are. What we care about is have you got good reasons, ultimately, whoever you may be.
Why?
You might have been the worst student in Oxford, and I might have been the best student in an unknown school. And I might know more about the subject than you from Oxford.
That may be.
You realize
unfortunately, I've had to follow yours. And if it's slippery, it's yours. But having said that, Pavlov, I will say something. You see, I'll tell you what the problem was. And I tried to bring it up for you, but you insisted on a particular way. You see, when you are talking about certain subject matter, the first thing to do is define the terms so that you know where you are going to be going. You automatically assumed certain things about the word justice, about the word the creator. Automatically, you thought that there is a particular way only of looking at it. I didn't look at it that way. Hence the problem.
That's the key thing. I'm not going to look at it this way. I'm just going to ramble and bring up whatever I feel like here. I'm not actually going to answer your question. I'm just going to look at it, quote unquote, another way. What I mean by look at it another way is I'm just going to ramble. I'm just going to go into the long grass and not go to the question. And that's how I, quote unquote, look at it. Like, just don't waste your time, right? Once you recognize this. And, I wish I still had that video. Maybe I should find it, where I did this with Skydive Phil. We went to Speaker's Corner. And we were looking for people he wanted me to find people to debate the Kalam cosmological argument, right? Because that's his specialty, or one of them, on the science. And I saw Shabir and I said to him, hey, do you want to speak to this guy? And he was like, oh, I'm going to have my coffee first, right? Me coming up and say, hey, do you want to speak to this guy? Obviously put him off, because like, why would Rob come and do this? Obviously this guy, why would he do this, right? Immediately that puts you, on your guard. But eventually Phil did come over and speak to him. And it turned out that they ended up, he didn't want to talk about the Kalam, right? It was the same sort of thing. I don't see it that way. I go right back to the beginning and ask, well, how did I don't see it that way with regards to the Kalam. I see it around evolution. We can't ask this question before we answer this one. And he tried to turn it on the Kalam. And it wasn't long, and Phil just sort of said to me, do you want to find somebody who wants to talk about, the Kalam? And I went off and I found somebody. When I came back, Phil's like, okay, thanks. And he walked away. I just walked away. Because he could see and afterwards he just, I can't remember the exact words, but along the line of, this guy's just an obscurantist. I didn't want to answer anything. It was a waste of time. I said, sorry, I just thought maybe you might get through, or whatever the case was, right? It just, yeah.
And this is the point here, because this Jimi Hendrix, he says, Allah cannot apply 100% justice and 20% mercy. If he is all just, it doesn't work. That's the point.
Correct.
Let's agree
No. Let's get. I am cutting to the chase. I am. What I'm going to say, Pavlov, God willing, because I come from that position, God willing, go and find out about justice and come back, and we'll have a conversation.
Give me your meaning of the word justice.
I have decided to stop the conversation here. It was a pleasure.
Okay, that's where you don't shake hands, right? He's been a thoroughly disingenuous interlocutor. Why would you shake hands, right? It's a human nature to do that, but I'd be looking at that and, why are you putting that hand out? Do you think that you deserve a handshake after this, dodging of everything? And I think that's kind of where it ends anyway. So this is where they walk away.
A pleasure to speak to you. And once you have learned a bit more, come back to me.
Very good game of tag here. Very interesting.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Goodbye.
So there we go. Right? So I think Pavlov, just for me, Pavlov did recognize it. Again, we can see the obscurantism, the dodging of the question, the trying to go into the long grass. And again, it's just a great example of not volunteering information that is not necessary. It's so easy to do. We often do this. We want to say, no, you're wrong, and da-da-da. And the moment you do that, it gives them a back door, a side street, to allow them to go off on a side tangent, which we don't want to do. But it takes practice and it takes discipline to not do that. When they're making these spurious claims that we can see are false, it's so easy to say, no, you're wrong. Go, okay, how do you demonstrate that, right?
And we are well aware that it's very easy to do this here, in retrospect, in the comfort of your home and chair and everything, whereas I'm notoriously bad at quick thinking on my feet, because there's a lot of things afterwards when I think, oh shit, why didn't you use that? Why didn't you say that? Why did you say? Afterwards, it's all very clear. I know, but this is practice. I'm getting a lot better than I was a couple of years ago. I am aware of that. But I don't get enough practice. So I think Rob is actually doing the better thing, and that is actually going out and talking to people. I'm not. I'm too lazy to do that. So
every now and again, I'll invite Stops to Discord. That's one place where you can, if you want to meet up, by the way, because we've come to the end anyway, which I'm sure Stops will bring up. But yeah, we've got our own Discord. I hang out. We don't have, it's normally, we have it more open on a Friday like this. I'll put the link in the chat, but I hang out on other Discord channels now as well. And sometimes I'll invite Stops in, especially if there's a Muslim, because that's Stops' specialty as well. And then, we can have some conversation. So practice, if you're interested in this stuff, jump onto Discord on our server. There's the link in there. And come speak to us afterwards, and find other servers as well where you can have conversations, listen in, take some notes, ask some questions. And that's the only way, if you are interested in doing this sort of stuff, that's how you improve. I improve when I listen to smart people, and there's plenty of them. And I like to be one of the least smart people in a hangout or a room or whatever the case is, because that's how I can pick up some really good information.
And just grit and bear it, because a lot of times it means walking on eggshells. Yes, it does. And it's very difficult for me. But a lot of times I listen to the people and then it works, yeah. Are you putting up a comment?
No. Sorry, I was just trying to click further on. It was stopping my thing there.
Because why so? You brought up the attributes of Allah, and one of the attributes is the inheritor. So this is why I was asking whether you were talking about this one, because this absolutely does not make sense that Allah can inherit something as being a God. But it's one of the attributes of this Allah God that He is the best of all inheritors. So that's why I was talking about this. All right, guys, then the last thing for me to do is to bring up the Hadith of the week. Thank you very much to everybody. And it's been a fun show. And remember, we're going to see some changes in Islam. Mark my words. Anyway, this might be a hadith we will never see again. Maybe it will be chucked out, even though it is part of Bukhari. Because the Prophet said, none of you will have faith until he loves me more than his father, his children, and all mankind. That's how it goes. I mean, this is, I think, the same thing actually that Jesus said. You have to have the same thing, and you have to abandon your family and everything so that you can love me. I mean, it's so sick, it's so silly, it's so everything. But
this is probably the most evil statement I've seen.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? On that beautiful, wonderful, and pernicious note, I wish you good night. Let's have the last statements from the panel. Let's start with Nick of Time.
Yeah, I just want to say, let's have as much fun getting to hell as we do at hell.
Yeah. Rob, sir.
I've had my closing statement, I think. So I just want to wish everybody a great weekend, and to my co-panelists. And we'll be back next Friday. Look forward to it.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you to the chat. Thank you, people. It's wonderful to see so many of you here, and it's sometimes I didn't have much time today to look what was going on. I saw a couple of comments, but not as many as I would have liked. So better luck next time. But join us on Discord if you want, and if not, then we will see you next week on Friday on the 11th. Gin and Tonic Show, same place, same time. See you then. Good night.